your opening page of your website, they have these little numbers. 8,396,201 in the past 24 hours. What does that mean?
Did you visit in the past 24 hours?
I did, yeah.
Well, then you were counted. I don't know how many times you visited, but that is a running count of how many people or how many times the page was loaded. Again, that's not how many people came, it's how many times the page was actually loaded, and yesterday it was upwards of 8 million. I saw a doubling in the past, I'd say 4 months, and probably because of Iraq. Last time I sat here a year ago, I think we were at 2-3 million, so it's way up.
What's happened to you in the last year?
Nothing different. I'm still doing this full time. The Drudge Report is still my complete passion, and the mischief making, which I now do these days down in Miami Beach as opposed to Hollywood, California. I've given up my entertainment flair in my life, and I'm now down on the beach, but still far away from the folks that occupy this town.
Didn't I read that Ann Coulter came down there to join you in the same city?
She's not there yet. You know, she has a new book coming out called Treason, which is coming out as a defense for McCarthy, a defense. She's going to have quite a summer on her hands. She's decided to lie low until the book comes out, and then she'll be on the beach with me, I think.
But that also brings up the story. It's been in all week that a couple of publishers, a couple of New York-based Manhattan 6th Avenue publishers are actually going to publish conservative books up there like Crown.
Well, which is Coulter's publishing house, which is Random House, which is now owned by the Germans. I don't know. You're seeing, as you look at the New York Times bestsellers list, which I don't have on any given week, conservative voices. It's swinging back to more of a multi-voiced list, as opposed to just wall-to-wall conservatives, where somebody like Michael Savage, for example, can beat somebody like Thomas Friedman in sales. That tells you something about the state of things.
The political books on the Wall Street Journal list, Leap of Faith with Queen Nora, #1, Stupid White Men, still hanging in there after 52 plus weeks, #7. The Savage Nation with Michael Savage, #10. Future of Freedom, Fareed Zakaria, #11. Jarhead with Anthony Swafford, #12. And Crisis of Islam, Bernard Lewis, 13.
A side note on the Michael Moore book, you know, it's a Rupert Murdoch book. And Tim Robbins was in this town last week lamenting Rupert Murdoch as this right-wing zealot. There's some, Ted Turner takes after Rupert Murdoch this morning, saying he was a warmonger. Ted Turner calls rival media mogul Murdoch warmonger. Hold on, Rupert Murdoch published Michael Moore's book. And even Michael Moore knows that. So I don't know, and I'm not exactly, you know, an ultimate cheerleader for Rupert Murdoch. I used to work for him at the Fox News Channel, and we had a nice little run there. But this guy, Murdoch, did the Michael Moore book, which is the most successful anti-Bush book. So I don't know where it comes down on that. Everything is as black and white as these people present it.
Why are you here?
White House Correspondents' Dinner, come rain or shine, come war or no war, and this year looks to be kind of a more somber year. Ray Charles doing the music, no Paula Jones, no Fawn Hall, no Ozzy Osbourne, so it's going to be rather sedate inside that room.
You show on the web this morning that the BBC Director General is blasting the American media for, I don't want to use the words till I find it, but the reason I bring it up is because when you get in that ballroom over the Westin Hilton, or wherever they're doing it, the President of the United States will be there, 3,000 journalists. What kind of reception will he get? Because, for instance, they're saying, Mr. Greg Dyke is saying, thanks to your website this morning, personally, I was shocked while in the United States by how unquestioning the broadcast news media was during the war. I think compared to the United States, we see impartiality as giving a range of views, including those critical of our own government's position. I think in the United States, particularly since 11 September, that would be seen as unpatriotic. We could go on, but he's not very happy with the American media.
Well, but so what? You know, we're not government financed as the BBC is. We have public enterprises that are actually done by corporations looking to make a profit, and patriotism right now is the right thing to do. What would he have argued during World War II, for example, that Edward Murrow would have been pro-Germany, would have been objective in that war? It seems to me there's always been a pro-America taint to everything. Now, I brought you, and this is very hard to find, cable ratings that are raw and unedited. This is for Wednesday night. look at what dominates the top 3. This would be the patriotism network.
The O'Reilly Factor on the record with Greta Van Susteren and Hannity and Combs. And then, of course, we got to get a licks in for SpongeBob SquarePants #4.
Now, the only show represented from CNN would be way down there, and it'd be Larry King.
And that's down about number 20.
With, I don't know what rating, it's like a 1.5. Larry's seen better nights. No MSNBC on there at all. So when the BBC says, oh, it was too gun-ho, I don't know exactly what that means, because we love our country here, Mr. BBC. We want our troops to succeed. We want our president to be strong. Why wouldn't we have gun-ho American coverage? That still doesn't mean you don't report what's happening on both sides, but it certainly means you are rooting for your country to win. You know, David Weston, the president of ABC News, got in a little trouble right after 9/11, saying, well, maybe the Pentagon was a fair target for the enemy. I don't know that from the American Broadcasting Company. I don't think is the correct stance, but maybe I'm just not seeing it.
I want to get the phone lines up on the screen so that your callers, friends can join us here this morning. We've divided it to agree with the president and disagree with the president. Lines are wide open. Matt Drudge will be here to the top of the hour. And then, by the way, we're going to have someone here that you might even be interested in, a guy named Dan. It rhymes with sobriety. Briety is his name. And it's the Iron Triangle inside the secret world of the Carlyle Group. And there's a lot of PR comments that came along with it. And let me just ask you how interested you would be. With over $13.5 billion under management and nearly 500 employees in 21 offices worldwide, the Carlyle Group is one of the largest, most successful, and most powerful private equity firms on the planet. To maintain its impressive track record in the tricky buyout business, Carlyle practices a unique style of investing, concentrating on heavily regulated industries like defense, telecommunications, energy, and healthcare. The company bets its money on its power to predict future trends in government policy and spending. What's more, it covers its bets by hiring political heavyweights, including former Secretary of State and CIA Deputy Director Frank Carlucci, former Secretary of State James Baker, former President George Bush, former UK Prime Minister John Major, and former SEC Chairman Arthur Levitt.
Well, it's certainly up for discussion, the cross-section of business and corporations and government. We're seeing the FCC, for example, about to issue new media rules. And Michael Powell, who's in charge of the FCC, will be issuing these rules. Unfortunately, his father works at the State Department. His father used to also sit on the AOL board. Michael Powell, the son, approved the merger of AOL Time Warner that his father also signed on, who I assumed owned shares that perhaps are in a blind trust now. The confusion, I think, from a citizen standpoint is, where is the blurring? Where is the marriage between these corporations, these groups, and government and rules and regulations, and who profits from it?
Matt Drudge, our guest, Erie, Pennsylvania, our caller, someone who agrees with the president. You're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Morning.
Hi.
Hi, Mr. Drudge.
Morning.
I want to say I'm very proud and very patriotic of the way this war has been handled. Our tax dollars have been very well spent in that regard. And I wanted to move on to a subject that I don't know if you heard of. Brian said you have a whole bunch of different topics to discuss, but there's one in California on conservativepetitions.com, and it's regarding failure to report rape in a lot of government clinics and Planned Parenthoods. There's actually a lawsuit from the U.S. Justice Foundation, and they're up to like 20 states now that are seeing children younger than the age of rape in the states, and they're handing them condoms and birth control, and they're failing to report rape, which are felonies. And these children, in some states, it's like 3,000 kids, some 700, and it's a story that they want to bring up to the Attorney General, because this is tax dollars through Title X federal government money, and also CAPTA money, child abuse prevention. So I wondered if you investigate anything like that, if you would be interested, because I think it's a huge scoop on how many kids are being raped and not being reported, because we just had the incidents with this priest, being covered up.
Thanks, caller. Got the point.
Well, she cited a website. I recommend anybody who has issues that are close to them to launch their own Drudge Report type website. I can't follow every single story in every single state at every single turn. So I usually wait for things to bubble up to a point when I think we've reached some point of it being a national story.
Total number of DrudgeReport.com employees.
Well, I'm the only full-time one. I've got a gentleman who helps me out in Los Angeles. He's been with me for years, and every reader who keeps me up to date.
So people do get in touch with you personally and say, "Have you seen this?"
Yeah, the instant messages, the email, everything. Yes, it's a nice immediate communication. Be careful not to upset your employees. They'll get on the instant message and let me know about it.
Ann Arbor, Michigan. Good morning.
Good morning. I had a couple statements. One is about these bestsellers lists and how it's going. I think the corporations have a lot to do with who buys what. When I've gone to the bookstore, you have to special order the books that are left-wing or that are anti-against this president. But Foxes, Factor, and all of them are in your face every step of the way, including bias and slander. And when I ask the people about this at the store, they say, well, the corporations send down these placards, and they tell us who to put out there, so that explains why some are more popular than others. And secondly, I wanted to say, Brian, I noticed a couple years ago when Bush first got in office, you had the lines that were, liberal or Democrat and Republican and others, and it was 2-to-1 people calling it against Bush. So then you changed it to agree with Bush and disagree. And still there were people calling in going, well, I'm really against the president, but I called on this line because I couldn't get on the line that was against the president. That tells me something. I'm wondering how many viewers you have. I don't believe the polls. No, I'm not for the war. And since Drudge is so great in digging up dirt on presidents, I wonder how he's managed to miss all the conflict of interest with Cheney and Halliburton getting all the construction work and all this other stuff that's been going on. I've never seen a more corrupt government. And MSNBC should be big because they have a picture of Bush on their station at all times. Sort of reminds me of Saddam Hussein.
Thanks. Mr. Drudge.
An interesting echo, because it wasn't too long ago that conservatives were complaining when you walked into a bookstore that you couldn't find the books. You couldn't find the Rush Limbaugh book, for example, that they were hiding it in the cooking section. So as it flips, and of course, who's ever in power, and this power right now belongs to the Republican Party in this town, you're going to have an anti-movement, as we did last century with the Clinton generation. There was an anti-movement. But it's interesting to hear that you walk into a bookstore now and all you're seeing are conservative books, when I can recall not too long ago that it was just the opposite, and the same complaints were being made on the other side.
On this list right here, the Wall Street Journal, Anthony Swafford, conservative?
That I'm not sure of, no.
Fareed Zakaria?
Good question.
Michael Moore?
Well, we know that one. Yeah. So
he's not a conservative.
No, he's not conservative.
Little Rock, Arkansas, you're on.
Good morning. I'm a Matt Drudge addict and a Brian addict, and I get both of them today. Matt, I've seen your site every day for the last 3 years. I can't live without it, and I want to thank you so much. I guess I want to ask, and by the way, I went into Barnes & Noble last night. You see conservative books. You see all the liberal books. I don't know what this lady's talking about. Matt, how have you, and this is a self-serving question, how have you, in the last 3 years that I've really been able to see you, how have you maintained your independence? And I believe you're independent because I see stories on both sides on your site. How have you maintained and have stayed Matt Drudge?
By being on the internet, quite frankly, without any corporate concerns. This is key. You know, when you start getting into a corporate arena, things do change. You answer to shareholders, you answer to CEOs who may be friends with presidents or not friends with presidents. There's an interesting photograph running on the AP this morning of the big interview between Brokaw and Bush. Now, this is the second interview, if I'm not mistaken, that Bush has granted Brokaw, one right after 9/11. And these two they seem to be quite close. It's surprising that the White House, I believe, has chosen NBC to be their network of choice. The first night of the Iraq War, for example, they were leading the way on developments, exclusives on troop movements, on where the bombs were falling. It was NBC all the way. The White House has targeted it. I don't know why. I don't know if there's deals done. I can't imagine that GE would compromise itself to give favorable coverage for access.
Well, let me ask you, the numbers that the NBC News get are far superior to everybody's.
Not far superior. It's
I mean, would you add in MSNBC, CNBC, NBC, and the websites and all that, their numbers are above everybody.
Yeah, but Peter Jennings, when we get down to really where the action is, the evening news, is only a couple 100,000 viewers behind Brokaw on any given night. It's still a horse race. Dan Rather's a few leaps behind. But I would argue Tom Brokaw has found a great source in the President of the United States.
Let me ask you, we talked about this last year. How does Matt Drudge make his money off this website?
Off this website? Well, if you notice, there's one ad that can range from various pins being sold, New York Times being sold, movies running. This is the one thing that possibly has changed since the last time I saw you. This ad has become more popular, and it is making revenue. I'm completely sold out through mid-May.
You got to click on it, though, for you to make money.
No, you don't. It has to load. It's nice if they click and visit, but it just has to load. It just has to appear.
You told us last year you get something like 15 cents every time I
Yeah, that changed. The formula changes, and if you notice, the size increased, too, where I'm now becoming much more like the
So you are continuing to become a rich man.
This has allowed me to be the highest paid person we're doing news on the internet, I do believe, yes. But you have to recall, I'm hitting 8 or 9 years. And for the first 5 years, several visits here, I sat here and I wasn't making one penny. So
what are you doing with all this new money?
Oh, it's all in the bank. I'm a cash man. You save it for a rainy day in case SARS comes and I have to go into the bunker or something.
Stamford, Connecticut, you're on.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
I appreciate C-SPAN for its unbiased coverage. I think most of the media is reminiscent of George Orwell's 1984 in terms of newspeak. Who is our ally, has always been our ally. Who is our enemy has always been our enemy, although the reality is substantially different from that. As long as it was in our favor to support the UN against communist aggression and incursions in lands that were not democratic, we were all for it. We needed the allies to do that, to prevent communism from hostile takeovers of those countries. Now, all of a sudden, that there's no longer a communist threat, so to speak. It's forget about the UN and implement U.S. policy. I think that the current administration's stance in terms of the government that gets put into place in Iraq, in terms of the sovereignty of that people, regarding how they want to structure it, if they want to structure it along religious lines or not, is their business. And who are we to say what fits and doesn't fit the democratic process that we are willing to support?
Thanks. Mr. Drudge.
Well, I don't know. I didn't hear a question. I barely heard a comment there. This is a continuation of that we shouldn't have gone to Iraq. What are we doing in Iraq? How we're going to get out of Iraq? And it's one citizen's point of view.
Cooksville, Tennessee, you're on. Cookeville, Tennessee, you're on. No, we got Rock Hill, South Carolina, you're on.
Hi, how y'all doing this morning?
Good, welcome.
Mr. Drudge, I'd like to ask you about an article that was written around about 1995-96 in regards to certain components of a satellite system launched from Chinese soil that was never recovered. Mm-hmm. And I'll hang up and listen.
That was an incredible story that apparently we lost some of our top secret sensitive satellite spy equipment in China. A very good question. What was Loral fined a couple $100,000 for sharing technology? I think that was the end, the fallout. You know, you get these great build-ups for these stories, and then when they're resolved, they're not as exciting.
Now, Cookeville, Tennessee, you're on.
Hello?
Hi.
Yes, Mr. Lamb, I want to thank you first for C-SPAN, and also I have a question and a comment, if I could.
Go right ahead.
A question for you, Mr. Lamb, and then I do have a comment, please, if I could make it to Mr. Drudge. This is my question. Michael Moore has been, I think, in the top you know, whatever, top 50 to 100 for close to 2 years for Stupid White Men. I watch you daily, and I have never seen him on in book notes or to be interviewed on his book. Have I missed him, or has he just not been interviewed? And I just sort of wondered, why not?
Well, he has been invited, and we have not been able to schedule him up till now, believe it or not. And we've had him on here, though, in other venues. We just haven't had him on book notes. He is coming out with a new book in the fall, so between now and the fall, we'll get him.
Okay, well, I sure hope so. I hope you do. And the comment I have to Mr. Drudge, what he said, I believe HarperCollins might be the publisher of that book.
Judith Regan. Yeah.
It is owned, okay, and I agree with what you said, sir, about it being owned by, you know, the corporation and Rupert Murdoch. But the one thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, in other words, they wanted, when this, after 7/11, they wanted to hold the publication. It's not quite as rosy a picture as you paint. As a matter of fact, they wanted him to change chapters and revise some of the book, about particularly a chapter about President Bush. And what happened, a bunch of librarians actually got wind of this, that Reagan or whoever that publisher was, I guess it was them, you're correct, wanted to sort of sit on this, if you will, and they deluged this company, the publisher, and therefore they helped pressure to get it released. So, I mean, there's sort of two sides to that, and they also didn't do a lot of publicity.
But to be fair, caller, Rupert Murdoch commissioned the book, gave Michael Moore an advance for this book. If they wanted to change some of the words after the terrorism out of sensitivity, maybe not even release the book because it was bad timing, that is a decision that I think is separate. As if 9/11 hadn't happened, I think they would have gone gun-ho anyway. As you see, they continue to reprint the book. Rupert Murdoch hasn't recalled that book. I just use that as one example of, for instance, the Tim Robbins theory at the press club last week, which I see is your most downloaded thing on C-SPAN as of even again this morning. People want to hear this gentleman. To say Murdoch is this one vision isn't correct. He gives a lot of different voices and a lot of different people opportunities, including Michael Moore, who, by the way, has left News Corp and HarperCollins for, I guess, more money across the street.
Lawrence, Kansas, home of the University of Kansas. You're on the air.
Hey, Matt. I just want to know, why did this story about the British Labour MP on Saddam's payroll get so little press over here? I mean, it really begs the question, who else is on Saddam's payroll?
Was that George Galloway, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Mr.
I don't know.
Drudge.
I wasn't even, for some reason, that story didn't get my gut either. Now, he is claiming it's untrue. He's claiming he's going to sue those newspapers for libel. But we'll continue to watch it. There is, however, a story I'm very interested in leading the British press this morning. Boy, I don't know how the New York Times or the Washington Post or any of these other folks missed it. Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of England, has been holding secret meetings with Bill Clinton, the former president, is the allegation made in The Guardian. This last month, at the height of the buildup of the Iraq War, apparently President Bush was not aware that Clinton was offering him specific advice, Blair, on European allies and European strategies, almost as if there is a triangulation going on, a shadow government, and Bill Clinton was deeply involved, according to this newspaper report.
Anything wrong with that?
I would think there's a protocol. I would clear that with the White House, I would think. You don't want to undermine the State Department. You don't want to undermine what's already taking place officially in this government. I never saw, for instance, Bush, the first Bush president, going behind Clinton's back and negotiating and giving advice to allies. Now, you could say Clinton is a private citizen, and they're good friends. He's good friends with Tony Blair, and they've simply kept that relationship going. My concern is Clinton would go public with messages for Bush, trying to slow down the military buildup and go for more a diplomatic angle, which the story alleges. This, to me, is Clinton playing almost an official role in diplomacy without the approval of the executive branch that it currently is in power.
Let me ask you what might be a proprietary question, but I'll ask it anyway. What are your costs, other than your salary and your...
Just the server.
And what does it cost you a year to operate all that?
Well, the servers, I get a great deal, about $3,500 a month to run my server for the Drudge Report. I don't know what your bill is.
I don't either.
For C-SPAN. You have a lot more visuals.
Yeah, we have a lot of streaming.
I have one page. I have no streaming. I have no spinning ABC News globes that come across your screen that eat up bandwidth. It's a very lean, mean operation. There's no color even on the page, with a few exceptions. That helps me. Those pictures I have there are coming off of other sources. For instance, the scanning of the passenger in Asia to see if he has a temperature. This new technology trying to fight a new virus, SARS. That's not my photo, so that's not coming off of my server, as is the passengers wearing the face mask.
You don't have to pay for that?
No.
Why not?
Because there have been court rulings that you're allowed to have, I don't know what the correct legal term is, a certain size of an image that is a free domain. This discussion is ongoing. As you read earlier in the Washington Post, I'm to meet Hillary Rosen, who's head of the Record Industry Association, who has fought viciously against the downloaders. And it is a huge battle on what is free on the internet, what is copyright. And Hillary Rosen is under the feeling that you can't download music. This is a great fight. We're going to be debating this for years to come. You can't download images. Soon you won't be able to download wire copy or even newspapers unless you're authorized to. This fight is not over.
This book is written by Dan Briotti. It's called The Iron Triangle. It's about the Carlyle Group. He's our guest at the top of the hour. But for Matt Drudge, Chicago, you're on.
Yes, this is Dan from Chicago. Hello?
You're there. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm glad they're going to finally talk about the Carlyle Group. I think that's pretty interesting. It's going to bring out a lot about the president. I just want, excuse me, I just want to quickly say that they was talking about yesterday. Bush was talking about, so what if they do not find any weapons of mass destruction? I just think it's ridiculous. I mean, and this just simply shows that they went over there simply for oil instead of anything else, because they would not find no weapons of mass destruction. And yesterday he sounded so arrogant, said in other terms, like, so what if we don't, if we may not find weapons of mass destruction, the people over there are still going to be liberated. I mean, I just think that's ridiculous. I mean, over here in the United States, a lot of people not even liberated over here, and they never mentioned anything about liberation. So,
thanks, caller. Got the point. What do you think? Anybody care about this?
Well, in the United States, you have to liberate yourself, quite frankly.
Does anybody care about weapons of mass destruction, other than people who are opposed to the war? Yeah, but other than people opposed to the war, do you think if he doesn't find it, anybody's going to care?
Not his supporters, no. Why
think, not?
I think they've embraced this president. They're relating to him on a deep level. They feel he's protecting the boundaries, and they're relating. I don't necessarily think that you won't find anything. He's leaving that option open. But yes, it was curious to hear him wiggle around a little bit. There's been nonstop front page Hal Raines New York Times exclusives about maybe the weapons were destroyed days before going in there. That sounds almost like it's written out of Hollywood, almost as a nice exit line. Doesn't matter. He's riding high in the polls, even though we had a report on Reuters yesterday that the White House pollster is convinced Bush will go below a Democrat rival as the year building up to the election progresses. Can you imagine Bush falling behind a Democratic rival and the excitement that will bring to this town? So I don't think it's a home run without any skidding in some dirt towards re-election. And this caller has voting coming up here in about a year's time.
Can you tell with your records what stories are clicked on the most? So you just know that they've been on your site?
I just know they've been on my site. I can judge by the email. I can judge by talk radio. I can judge by where the commotion is coming from. For instance, the Dixie Chicks story, which originated basically on my site, you could see that one grow and balloon. I don't know if Tony Blair meeting with Bill Clinton in secret will be a huge story. I don't know. Well, we're about to find out as the day progresses.
Let's go to Riston, New York. You're on.
Hi. There was a big story in the New York Post yesterday about Senator Schumer taking $47,000 from a Jewish-owned security firm, and then a month later sponsoring a bill for the FBI to share information on Americans with security firms. And this is, I looked at your website, I didn't see this story, and this is typical of the way you, a lot of stories never bubble up and get on your radar. Any stories that are anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian or never seem to make your website. I know you're Jewish. Are you a pro-Zionist?
Well, sir, on my website right now, I've got the Islamic Republic wire that you could click on. That is pretty. That's pretty much of a departure from an Israeli point of view. I've been spearheading coverage on a lot of directions. I just didn't think the Schumer story was extremely that interesting. After all, there are 100 senators. And like the previous caller, I can't cover every single one of them every day. It's a fight to keep the website lean and mean and not have 500 stories a day. But you're welcome to launch your own website and put your priorities in order, and we'll come see you.
Cleveland, you're on.
Yeah, we just got through this so-called war, and I'd like to ask Mr. Drudge to put it in the context of the past, let's say, 30 years with, the World Trade Organization and the IMF and the exporting and manufacturing jobs, the huge buildup of big business, campaign financing, lobbying. You get into the Defense Department, fighting with the with the State Department, and can you kind of make a correlation? And I'd also like to add that I just wrote a book, and I just had a publisher contact me about something like this. And what can I look forward to as far as reception in something like this?
Again, it's a similar tone where it's from almost every call this morning, and your upcoming guest, the marriage of business and government and regulation. And it's very concerning. At the height of the Iraq War, Donald Rumsfeld issued a warning to the media, don't show that POW film. Don't show it. Meanwhile, Canada, Mexico, all these other countries were showing it. It was available on the satellite out of those countries. But our media listened to Rumsfeld, and I'm not sure it was a national security issue. It simply was a decision from the Pentagon that it wouldn't be helpful to their mission to show POWs. I didn't follow Rumsfeld's lead. I put up graphic visuals. Stills from the video of the slaughter of Americans with pants down and bullet holes in their head. Also, the first one to show the faces of the POWs, which thankfully have since been released and are safe at home. But when you have a Pentagon ordering a media to do something and they're following as the FCC is pending an expansion of ownership, meaning maybe if CBS did air those POWs, the rulings wouldn't come down favorable at the FCC. Now, that is a wild accusation, but is it so far-fetched when people like Sumner Redstone and Michael Eisner and Murdoch are petitioning this government to own and purchase even more outlets? Newspapers, television, radio stations, beyond 8 in a market in some cases. They had to follow rules from the Pentagon, otherwise they would be upstarts. But we have other media now, Brian Lee, and we've got internet and talk radio who can discuss things more freely, I think, than the electronic press.
Is it Sterling or Stirling, Illinois?
Sterling.
Sterling, welcome.
Thank you. Brian, I'd like to thank you for having Matt Drudge on. Matt, your website's at the top of my bookmark list every morning. You're my morning newspaper. And matter of fact, how I found out you were on C-SPAN today was you had it right there, 8 a.m. Eastern at 7 a.m. Central, so I turned it on. And I'm calling from, as I said, Sterling, Illinois, which is in Whiteside County. Whiteside County is the birthplace of Ronald Reagan. And I was just calling, Matt, to get your opinion on how you think history will treat President Reagan. I'll hang up and listen for your answer.
The second we get the AP News alert that there's been a death on St. Cloud in Los Angeles, that a former president, the oldest living president in our history, is dead, I think you will see what Ronald Reagan and how he's remembered in this country. Of course, there'll be the detractors. Of course, there'll be people who were there and fought him politically. But you will see an embracing of a president that I don't think we've seen. Even when Nixon died, and that funeral, the country kind of rallied behind the president, even though he was on the verge of complete disgrace. I think Ronald Reagan's going to be remembered well. I would also say this, much to the horror of my detractors, I think Bill Clinton is going to be a president who will be warmly remembered in hearts of some citizens. A new book is coming out in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks. By the way, Brian, have you booked this for Book Notes?
Haven't even seen the galleys on it.
It's Sidney Blumenthal, who I've had a slight history with, is coming out with an 800-page book on, I understand, never-before-told stories and visions from inside the Clinton administration.
Is this the first time we've seen this cover?
It's been running on Amazon for a while. The Clinton Wars. This from a crowd telling us to move on.org. They're still fighting the Clinton Wars. We all are. And this from a gentleman who hasn't been public yet. But 800 pages on behind the scenes. Clinton is loved by many in this population, as is Reagan. Probably to different degrees, but I'm arguing from a point of view.
Now, you just slipped right by that saying you had a difference of opinion with Mr. Blumenthal. It was a lot deeper than that. Wasn't there lawsuits back and forth?
There was a $30 million lawsuit filed from a building on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that certainly was unprecedented. No presidential advisor has ever sued a reporter with the support of a president publicly that I was able to research.
So what happened?
He ended up settling and paying me off, paying my side off, because it was ridiculous on its merits. Maybe he'll discuss it further in the Clinton Wars.
Are you not allowed to talk about it?
I'm allowed to talk about it. He settled with me.
How much did he pay you?
A couple $1,000s, and it was symbolic. I made plenty of mistakes. I make mistakes all the time in my reporting, but making mistakes is not a crime in this country. Otherwise, the jails would be fuller than they are. I apologize to Mr. Blumenthal. That wasn't acceptable. He started quite a vicious campaign behind the scenes and publicly against me. He ended up losing, just losing, flatly losing, and he had to end up paying me off.
You going to read his book?
Oh, I can't wait. I'm trying to get the galleys now, and I'll be happy to do a banner headline.
Who's publishing it?
That's a good question. It's a fancy house. I understand he got $600,000 to...
Simon & Schuster?
Not Simon, no. For once, it's not Simon & Schuster.
Harrison Township, Michigan, you're on.
Yes, on March 22nd, about then and there on C-SPAN, they had this gentleman from the Kurdish embassy or whatever they have in Washington there representing them. And a caller called in and wanted to know about when they cyanide the Kurds. Rumsfeld was there in the 80s and got the cyanide from Chile and gave it to Saddam Hussein to use. When the caller hung up and wanted the man to respond, the guy from the Kurdish embassy, all he said was, America made a mistake then. I'd like you to comment on that, please.
I'm going to take a pass on that one, too.
Key Largo, Florida, you're on.
Good morning. Brian, a quick question for you. Everybody keeps cutting down Rupert Murdoch. Doesn't he own your station?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir. He hasn't got anything to do with this station. We have a lot of people on here from his publications, but he has no connection in any way. Although, having said that, if he gets control of DirecTV, which he's trying to, he will be a big customer because they have 11 million subscribers and they'll pay us money to carry this network.
Matt, don't you usually wear a hat?
I do, but it depends on the setting. I'll wear the hat for the big carnival tomorrow night, but it depends on the setting. And sitting here in the shadow of the Capitol, it just didn't feel exactly right this morning.
How come, I watched all the CENTCOM briefings and stuff, and everybody kept saying, did this surprise you? Did this surprise you? Did an ambush surprise you? Yes, an ambush surprised me. But when are we going to get back to investigative reporting? This money with the UN, how all these people were making money, and now they're trying to keep the sanctions going so they can keep making this money. Why aren't reporters doing more investigative reporting?
Well, sir, it sounds like you may make a good investigative reporter. Now any citizen can be a reporter. Why are you sitting in your lazy chair? Get out there and investigate. And if you don't want to launch your own website, send it to me, send it to others. We're living in a new century with every reporter now having the ability to be an investigative journalist and or reporter. And sir, it sounds like you've got the desire for that.
You know, one of the things I've noticed on your website, and I was trying to find, I don't know what I did with it, the cover on it. Lately, it seems like you've had a lot more of the stories you write yourself. Am I not so?
No, it comes and goes. If I've got something to say, some days the whole website can be my exclusives or my original reporting or my version of somebody else's original reporting. But it all depends where the action is on any given day. For instance, this morning, I don't think I have anything that I've put my name on. That will change as the weekend goes.
Where did you decide to use the word developing?
That is, it comes from visiting the museum, which I understand is closed for the temporary while they relocate. Anybody, if you visit Washington, D.C., and you're into media or news or even the history of this country and freedom, has to visit the museum because it will show you the foundations of this country as far as headlines, not just the current ones, the foundations, the black and white, the brutal foundations, which is a tabloid birth. And this is why it's always funny when you hear Columbia Journalism Review say our tradition of objective journalism is not necessarily the way it was founded. Developing is a throwback to the museum, impacting more, all that stuff is designed to at least keep the viewer's attention.
You use developing when you have more coming for the story. I want you to feel at home. Here's the front page of the Miami Herald today. America's chairman steps down. They're talking about Mr. Don Carty, chairman of the board of American, as we go to Philadelphia for Matt Drudge. Good morning. Hello, Philadelphia. Please pick up the phone. We're going to keep moving. We're going to go next to New York City. You're on the air.
Hi, Matt. Every supporter of Kazaa and Morpheus that I've read or heard about, indeed, even Kazaa and Morpheus themselves, do not claim that consumers have a right to file share copyrighted material. They all say that since Kazaa and Morpheus can be used for legal file sharing purposes, they cannot be held responsible for the illegal file sharing of copyrighted material. I'm wondering why, on what basis do you hold your position that consumers do have a right to file share copyrighted material?
Why did you hand me this article?
Well, this is pending. This ruling came yesterday that a cable company, Verizon, now has to reveal the identity of individuals who have been downloading music to the courts. And the executive branch in the Department of Justice have sided with the recording industry, saying individuals have no right to download music and share it and copy it. Now, this is going to go to the Supreme Court, no doubt about it, and we're kind of concerned because does Ruth Bader Ginsburg even know what an MP3 file is, for example? If she doesn't, they'll have to rule as they ruled with the VCR tapes or photocopies. I have to ask Hillary Rosen this weekend, the head of the RIAA, if she uses photocopies, because that is a copyright infringement, or has been argued. If she's ever taped something on a cassette that was copywritten, that would be a violation. We're just living in a new period where individuals have power to share files, and as the computer technology is doubling and speed is tripling every year, it's going to be an issue. What right does a citizen have to listen and view what they want, when they want it, if it's available? And I don't think they're going to be able to shut these services down, Brian Lamb, because you move offshore at that point. And eventually you'll end up in a world court with someone making the decision. How do you even enforce that? So I think it's a free-for-all. And while Hillary Rosen and that group may be well-intentioned, they're going to lose because they can't invade our downloads. You know, you can't get my hard drive. They think they can. They could subpoena it maybe, but I'll move it to somewhere else.
Where's it located?
At the hotel. My laptop would be my
No, but your physical hard, I mean, your server, what company do you use?
It's all over. It's out of San Francisco and out of Dallas, Texas, in case one goes down, it flips over to another one. But this is a real fight. And you're going to see a whole new generation who doesn't buy CDs, who download CDs, going to get arrested, going to get court-martialed if you're in the military and you're downloading music. All this is really going to be quite serious.
Matt Drudge is originally from Tacoma Park, Maryland, right here in the suburbs. He's a graduate of Norwood High School, class of 1984. He lives in Miami Beach at the moment. Started in the CBS gift shop in Studio City, California. Do you have another goal in your life? How old are you, by the way?
36.
What year did you start this?
8 years ago, 9 years ago.
Do you have another goal?
No. But all my dreams truly have been realized with this.
You're still doing ABC Sunday nights?
No, it's not ABC, it's Clear Channel. It's the evil Clear Channel, according to some in this town. It's the home of such varied voices as Dr. Laura and Rush Limbaugh and Carson Daly over at MTV. I'm still doing it, oh yeah. We're on WMAL here on Sunday nights in Washington and New York and Los Angeles and almost every city in between.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Brian. Thank you for C-SPAN. And I just want to say one thing about Brian is that we still can't figure out if you're Republican or Democrat. You're so fair, so that simply means you must be a Republican.
Oh,
but,
I see. Okay.
But a question for Matt. A month ago, you had an article from the Guardian newspaper that suggested that all of Saddam's weapons of mass destructions were packed onto semis and loaded over to Damascus and put on 3 different container ships, and they're floating around on the Indian Ocean. Everything is far-fetched. 9/11 is far-fetched. The whole war in Iraq, the fact that it's unbelievably successful is far-fetched. Is this idea still far-fetched that they're floating around on the Indian Ocean?
You would think our satellites would have found this if we're to believe our National Security Agency and the technology they have. I don't know. It certainly was worth a link when it happened, but I've noticed very few follow-ups. Do you think this is one day going to be used to tell if Brian Lamb's a Republican or a Democrat? This is the current sensor to see if you have SARS.
There's nothing in there. There's nothing in there to find.
Well, there's some heat. This is happening in Asia now. Before you board a plane, they test your temperature with some new technology to see if you're giving off heat. So maybe there will be a Frank Luntz version of some polling device that can gauge whether you lean left or right.
Who has tried to do what you're doing?
I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't know that.
I mean, don't you get a sense that all of a sudden, I know on our website we have the same kind of connections that you do, but it doesn't have the kind of traffic that you have?
I don't know.
I mean, what is it that got people so interested in you? And
besides lawsuits and interns and impeachment and controversy and POW videos that are banned in the United States, I don't know. I think it's, I tend to be rebellious in what I'm willing to report. Nobody can stop me from reporting anything. I can pay a consequence later, but you can't stop me.
Is there anybody any more independent than you are?
Oh, I'm not going to answer that. Of course there are. There's probably plenty of independent.
I'm really talking about from a financial standpoint. I mean, can anybody bring you down if you don't cooperate with them?
Sure, judges could bring you down. I could be fined.
I'm really talking about substance, the language of your website.
No, it would be my losing interest, my lack of determination to search for what I believe is true on any given day. No, I think I'm unstoppable. There's no way anyone can be stopped truly in the land of the free if you're willing to fight and slip and get back up.
Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, you're on.
Hello, Mr. Drudge. I was on the internet at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I bought 4 decks of those cards for $20. And the shipping and handling was $6.95. And it says that a percentage of that money will go to the families. What percent is that? I'm curious.
I don't know. That's one of my advertisers. You have to get with them. I don't know. I'm not selling those playing cards. I wish I were. They're going to make a mint.
One of the manufacturers says they've sold 700,000 of them.
as the talking Bush doll and all these other novelties coming from this era. But you know, we every administration brings with it novelty and toys.
Have you ever thought about doing that yourself? I mean,
no, because you have to understand this is an ambitious effort as it is. Keeping up with all this, I don't know how you do it, but it is a Herculean effort to try to capture a world and present it.
Just for a moment. You're on here for an hour this morning. Things are happening in the world. When will you, is your sidekick in Los Angeles keeping an eye on what's going on in the world right now?
No, he's probably in bed right now. No.
So you don't, nothing happens until you go back to pick up your laptop and check on it.
That's right, yeah.
And when will you do that?
Probably pretty soon. I was up pretty late last night and early this morning doing it. Again, it updates when I update it. And sometimes it's updated 500-600 times a day, which some would say is mental illness.
500 or 600 times?
Yes. When it's really hot and it's crazy, this site is updated. It takes me 3 seconds to make a new headline, literally. I can get something up there for you to see it in less than 3 seconds. It's a throwback to the wild days of newspapers when there were 6, 7, 8 editions a day. It's even bigger than 24-hour news operations by the time you put on the makeup and get the earpiece in. So it is a rapid clip, as are the wire services. If you click on the AP or Reuters or AFP, these people work. This is a free flow of information every minute, and that you're just looking at now is just the A wire. There are state wires, there are sub wires, there are budgets that are not allowed to be seen by people outside of the AP.
Why do you go to the Las Vegas Sun all the time for the AP?
Because they load fast. There's not a lot of clutter. It used to be Newsday, but they added so many ads and pop-ups and Java mixes that it's just, I'm looking out for my reader and trying to go for the fastest. If there's some site that just offered text only, I would link completely.
Norfolk, Virginia, Matt Drudge, we've got about 7 minutes. Go ahead, Norfolk.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to say that I don't agree with the president because I don't think his motives are pure, but what I wanted to ask you, and then I'm going to hang up, Mr. Drudge, I wanted to know, I see the Clinton talks with Blair about war plans. I wanted to know, is that accurate, that you know exactly what they were talking about, or could they have been just meeting, or is that something for people to take and run with and make it absolutely true?
Thanks. Well, great question. It has been published already. It is the lead headline of the Guardian newspaper in London, which is a reliable newspaper. They were actually the first newspaper to report that Bush was going to set his eye on Iraq. I thought that was an interesting headline on a Sunday, not too, about a year ago. And I wasn't sure about it, but it turns out they were right on that. Blair's secret war meetings with Clinton. Could they have been discussing just friends, as friends of the state of the world, perhaps? Could Clinton have actually been advising Blair and going behind Bush's back, acting sort of as a phantom shadow State Department? Perhaps. I would ask Ari Fleischer, first question out, if he's having a press briefing this morning. And from there, I will see the story, if it has any legs, appear in other outlets.
For Matt Drudge, Ruidoso, New Mexico, you're on, please.
Hi there.
Hi.
I was just wondering if you had any information on why this President Bush is not releasing the, or is trying to block the release of the presidential papers from his father's administration and that of President Reagan.
And also President Clinton.
Why?
It's a very good question. I fear a powerful executive branch. You know, Ken Starr, when he did his famous Starr report to Capitol Hill, his primary interest, he later said, was the president misusing executive privilege. In this case, over the intern and the deposition in the Paula Jones case. Misusing executive privilege, hiding behind the powers of the presidency. I think this is a disease that would go for either party, whoever sits in that office, and it's something to be watched. The founders of the country argued maybe there shouldn't be one president. There should be several. Not to give so much power to one individual to have a third of government. And these days, it feels like it's much more, especially with media. President Bush feels like he is the face of America, much to the detriment of many on Capitol Hill who wish they were the faces of America. I would worry about this. Who knows what they're hiding in any of these papers? You just have to make sure you stay healthy, and one day they'll release all the documents.
Who are you the guest of tomorrow night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner?
The Washington Times. And they are my first read every morning with superstars like Bill Gertz, with Wes Pruden leading the ship. I'm not ashamed to say I read the Washington Times first.
Did you see Mr. Pruden's French joke this morning?
Yeah, oh yeah, I saw it. And I'll eventually get to the Washington Post and then over to Hal Raines eventually. But the Washington Times has been superior with reporters who show no fear.
New Wilmington, Pennsylvania. You're on with Matt Drudge.
I love the site. Thanks for taking my call. Matt, the question for you is this. Obviously, I think the true power of your website is the obvious surge that sites get when they are linked to you and the drop-off when they are delinked. I know that two sites that I found through the Drudge Report website that have since been delinked have been the New York Press website with Russ Smith and also the Free Republic website. I know you've had pretty public falling outs with both of those sites, and I was just wondering if there was any chance of having those relisted on the Drudge Report at some point in the future.
Well, but you're already seeing them. I don't know. This is the trouble I get into. I can never seem to take anything off the site, and when I get petitioned, please add my column, please add my newspaper, then I'm pretty much stuck with it. Otherwise, it's almost an act of violence to dislodge their names.
Did you take the New York Press and the Free Republic off?
I did for various reasons. I don't necessarily want to get into all of them here. We had one run-in with Free Republic when the story came out that Clinton may have fathered a child with a woman in Arkansas, and they were making racial jokes and they were doing banner headlines. And unfortunately, not everyone understands the internet when they think that everything they see is from my site. They think that, for instance, the story of this gag order in Hawaii on emergency crews not allowed to talk about SARS calls is my story. So when I link to derogatory headlines, they think it's me, and I just got to watch out for that.
Last call for our guest is Chicago. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Brian. I have a issue to take up with you this morning. I've been wanting to talk to you on Fridays when you're in. This past week you had Daniel Pike on, and I was discouraged that you had someone that I would consider a bigot on. But my issue with you is that I know you don't have opposing guests on like as much as you used to, and that's to try to give viewers more opportunities to call in. But in cases like with him, a caller can't really challenge this individual like this properly, and you know it's properly as if you did have a guest opposing you as a guest on in the studio. And there's another issue also that I want to take over you. I click on to websites that's not Matt Drudge, but they're very democratic and very liberal sites, and I fail to see you really put it in these sites on, C-SPAN. I'd like to offer you one. This guy is a radio host, and he has his website. He's a radio host at IE America Radio. His name is Mike Malloy. He's got a website at www.mikemalloy.net. And I'd like to see you put people on like that, or people on from Democrat Underground, or people on from White Rose. I just, sometimes, like I say, I know you try to do a good job, and I appreciate that. But there's so many people that comes on C-SPAN now that, to me, they're fascists. They're so far right, but they've been legitimized that people accept them that, well, oh, these are just mainstream people. In my opinion, they're not, and we're not really getting a hard, a good view of people who totally disagree from these point of views from your C-SPAN.
Got to go. Thank you very much. We've got the names and the suggestions.
But I think the caller dismissed even his own point. He's going to the websites, and that's the whole point. The media bias argument is finished, is over. The Peter Jennings statue has fallen. You can pick and choose which universe you want to live in, which bias you want to swim in. And this whole argument left, right, and what book is in the bookstore and the shelf, all of that is over in the new century when you can click to whatever you want to click to. And I would argue I'm no longer thinking about media bias because I'm free from it. I can surf and cruise and go exactly where I want to go at any given point.
Thank you, Mr. Drudge. Please come back. Have a good time at the party.
Thank you.
On the desk is Dan Braddy's book called The Iron Triangle, Inside the Secret